So life can feel really hard right now with the wars and tragedies and society being so divided about the best path forward, let alone our own personal struggles and losses and disappointments. It can be challenging to find balance and energize the things that we want to bring into the world as opposed to the things that we don't. So I read a fantastic book earlier this year called Now Is Your Chance by Niyc Pidgeon. She's a positive psychologist and has some fantastic tangible strategies for how you can find those pockets of joy and happiness and fulfillment and bring in the life that you want. So I had a really inspiring conversation with Niyc, and I was thrilled when she agreed to be a guest on the podcast so that you can experience some of her magic and get some of these tips and strategies from her. This is going to be a bit of a different episode than some of the others that you may have listened to, in the sense that I'm not going to dive as much into Nick's personal story, as inspiring and incredible as it is. She's really honest about it in her books, but I wanted to take this time to give you as many tips and strategies as possible from her, and thankfully she was right on board with that agenda. She's so generous and really is on a mission to help as many people as possible find the light and find that focus and energize the life that they want. So if you're struggling right now to find that path forward and feel that happiness and joy and fulfillment, this is the episode for you. So let's get the skinny from Niyc Pidgeon. Hello, everybody. I got to tell you that I couldn't sleep last night because I was so excited about interviewing Niyc Pidgeon. I read her book, Now Is Your Chance, and I loved it so much that I just had to have her as a guest on the podcast because it's so simple and actionable. And so we're just going to dive right in. Niyc Pidgeon, if you do not know who she is, oh, let me tell you. She is an award-winning positive psychologist, and we'll talk about what that is in a minute. A motivational speaker, a business mentor. She's on a mission to just activate your full potential and happiness and joy and fulfillment. And she's the host of the podcast Unstoppable Success. And we all want more of that, right? And the author of the best-selling book, Now Is Your Chance, and the upcoming book, One More Day. So, Niyc, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited as well.
Yeah, we had a lovely conversation the other day. It kind of just made me all kind of warm and gooey inside. So just so we're all starting from the same knowledge base, because I think, the terms happiness and fulfillment and joy, we've also got a bit of a different definition about what those things are. So can you share what your definition and how you differentiate between those three things in your book?
Yes, for sure. So, joy is one of the positive emotions. So, it's one of those top kind of tier emotions that feel really good to us, that open up our thinking. And it's up there with things like love and enthusiasm and gratitude. It's also like, I think about joy as like it's this high. It's like this frequency. It's we're able to get on that level and then we're able to attract the things that we want into our lives. I also think of joy as something that we can intentionally create moments of within our life experience and within our week and within our day. Then fulfillment, I think of that as it's the feeling that we get. I mean, it's if you describe what it is, fulfillment, it's that
Yeah.
feeling of being full up and that sense of satisfaction that we receive from an experience. So perhaps we feel fulfilled through our work or through the impact that we're creating. And then happiness. So, happiness, I feel like people think of that as a goal. People think of like,
Yes.
when I get to this thing, then
Yes.
I'm going to have it all. Happiness is a state. Happiness is a feeling, and it's something that we can have right now. It's not something that needs to go out into the future and be on this kind of never-ending quest to get it. It's something that we can have right now, and we also don't actually have to be happy all of the time.
Oh, I love that. I love that because we feel like we're failing if we're not happy or in joy. Or I love one of the things, so many things that you said in your book, but one of the things where you talked about how you moved beyond this idea that um, happiness was about it was beyond positivity.
Mm.
Just going back to what you said about that, it was about being full, experiencing your life fully. So, can you talk about that with through the lens of positive psychology? Can you just define that for everybody and how that opened up for you, where you went beyond positivity or chasing just positivity, and then it became more of how these things blur within each other in terms of states?
Absolutely. So, positive psychology, it's the science of happiness, and it's how people, businesses, and communities can thrive. Now, what's interesting about that is even when people know that it's about how we can live bigger, better lives and be more optimally functioning, people still think, oh, well, it's just think positive and be happy all of the time. Now, it's actually not that. So, positive psychology, it's an evidence-based science where we run experiments to see what it is that makes life worth living. We look at human strength and virtue, we look at performance, we look at success, and we look at the conditions that are needed in order for us to thrive. Now, as well as looking at how we can go from good to great, one of the ways that we can do that is we're actually looking at the challenges, we're accepting the challenges that we experience, and we're looking within them to see the lessons, the blessings, and how we've actually grown because of them, not just despite them. So I think it was birthed really to bring a counterbalance to psychology as usual, which focused so much on disorder and disease, and looked at, okay, so if you've got these symptoms, then you're categorized with this particular mental illness. So positive psychology really looked at giving us an opportunity to see what's good in the world and to ask the question, what's working? When it comes to
Mm.
happiness, I think this idea of the concept of happiness, like I grew up and I was constantly hearing people say, when I'm happy, I'll be this. Or when I have the money, I'll be happy. Or when I have the dream body, I'll be happy. Or when I have the dream relationship, I'll be happy. So it's almost like I grew up thinking that happiness was attached to something that was
Yes.
outside of ourselves and it was somewhere to get to. So when you think that there's somewhere to get to, there's a gap in between where you're at right now and where you want to be. And that gap can feel very challenging. It can feel like it's hard. It feels like you're constantly seeking and striving for something. And when you are focused only on a goal or a destination, it's like this treadmill that we get on. It's called hedonic adaptation. So it's the idea that as soon as we get to the goal, it kind of goes further away from us. And now we're chasing the next thing because the money didn't make us happy or the partner didn't make us happy. So now happiness is even further away.
Yes, I love that term because we all want to be hedonists or hedonist or hedonist, depending on your accent, right? I really love this idea, just connecting happiness and joy, how you talked about finding moments or pockets of joy every day. And you have what I loved about your book, I love about your book in the present tense, is just the really tangible daily practices. And there are many of them that you give over the course of the 30 days. So, listeners, you can read this book just sort of 5 or 7 minutes a day, and it's a 30-day sort of program that you go through reading this book where the compounding effects of layering in these strategies that Nick gives you, it just opens you up in the most extraordinary ways. So, I want to ask you about where the opening began for you. So you talked about this in your book, how you determined at around 11 years old when you were bullied. So can you tell me about that, how that began the opening for you of just thinking about this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I got bullied really terribly back in high school by girls that actually wanted to physically fight. And looking back on that experience, it actually gave me so much because it started a path for me of really reclaiming my voice and starting to understand more about who I am. I also look back at the choices and the decisions that my parents made at that time, which ended up being really, really pivotal to my life because I had to change schools. So there was a day I used to get bullied the worst in, we call it in the UK PE. So it's like physical
Yeah,
education or
we'd
like,
call that
yeah,
in Australia,
cool. Okay,
totally. Yeah.
awesome. So in PE, that was where the lesson wasn't as structured. So I couldn't just sit in my seat and do my work and get on with things and ignore the bullies. It was a little bit more fluid, and I always felt like I was, well, I did get more attacked in those situations. And there was a Tuesday morning where I didn't want to go to school. The school hadn't done anything about it. My parents had been in, there was no kind of progress. And before school, I told my parents that I didn't want to go in. And I ended up taking all of the medicine in my mum's medicine cabinet, all of the painkillers that I could find. And I had a attempted suicide aged 11, which
Oh,
I then panicked because I started to feel really, really unwell. So I told my mum what I'd done, and she called my dad, who was out at work, and got him to come home from work. And they took me to the hospital, took me out of school. I was in hospital for 2 days, took me out of school, and I was homeschooled for 6 months because we couldn't find another school for me to go to that was in the same geographical catchment area. And then I got into the new school, and the new school I was only able to go to because my parents decided to remortgage the house to be able
ugh.
to afford to send me there. Now, when you're young, you don't fully appreciate the choices
Yeah,
that your parents make.
yeah,
So growing up, and I kind of got into my 20s, and then it dawned on me, I was like, that was a huge decision for my parents to make. Like after they've worked so hard to achieve what they've achieved, and to put a bet on this kid, to
yeah.
say like, I believe in this kid enough to give her another chance at life.
And
And
love, the
mm,
love, the love. You talk in the is it the forward or the acknowledgements about your parents knowing that you're a bookworm? And that because you talk about, how geek is she? I love that term in the book about how just soaking up the knowledge and reading and learning and always being in this growth mindset. Was your losing yourself in books and reading a byproduct of being bullied and wanting to escape or retreat from others? Was it sort of a point of connection for you? Is that where that came about for you? Or was it just have you always been thirsty to learn?
I always loved learning, and I was that annoying kid. I didn't label myself as this, but my parents did. I was the annoying kid that always asked why. So I was like, why is that like that? Why? Why this? Why
Yeah.
that? And I had a very inquiring mind. Now, it's interesting that you ask about that intersection from when I was 11 years old, because I had always loved books, and it was something that I went really deep into when I was getting bullied because it
Yeah,
was
me
a
too.
positive distraction.
Me too.
Y-
I was bullied at school too. So when I read that in your book, I could really relate to it. So that's
mhm.
probably why I'm kind of honing in on it because
Yeah.
I found books as a refuge as well.
And it's interesting because I remember reading a book at that time, and it was called Children of Morrow. It's one of my
Mm.
favorite books. It was written in 1974, so it's bizarre that I even found it as an
Yeah,
11-year-old.
yeah,
And it's actually about a post-apocalyptic world where there's been a virus that happens, and some of the kids are psychic, and it's about what humanity looks like when
yeah,
we live in community again together. So I found that at that age, and then I found it again in my teenage years, and then I found it again when I was going through healing later on in life. So it's been this book that kind of comes back at these really defining
yeah,
moments that gives me some sort of
yeah.
solace.
Yeah, there's a line in I don't know if you see this movie, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peels Pie Society. Oh, I loved that movie so much and that book. And she talks about how books find themselves to their perfect readers.
Mm.
Books find you. So really, I really love that story. So in the book, you talk about post-traumatic growth and that there's studies actually done about this. So in your life, you've had quite a bit of trauma. So being bullied, and then later in life, you talk about when you were raped in the book. So And then will, your friend sticking those positive affirmations in your bag, and that therein began the journey of, positivity and words and that kind of thing. Can you share a little bit about these intersection points, about how you've charted in your life and now how you help others chart in theirs, how we can utilize these experiences that are indeed very traumatic and can really send us into these very dark places, and how you've been able to harness your inner power and being part of your own solutions, as you talk about, to really harness the power of that post-traumatic growth.
Yeah. I think the first thing to remember is that everything is always serving our growth, even if it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like it at the time. So if I look back at the challenging experiences that I've had and when I was going through the healing process, there was times during that, and I'm thinking specifically about when I was healing after I'd been raped. I remember going to see the counselor at Rape Crisis and never wanted to go to the therapy session. I always felt like I was going to have nothing to say, but I showed
Mm,
up anyway.
yeah.
And that would be one recommendation or invitation if you are struggling right now, is keep showing up.
Yeah.
Because I just trusted that by doing that, something eventually was going to shift. And it really, really did. And it was the presence that actually caused the breakthroughs. And I started to be able to see these tiny little glimmers of light where I could see, oh, today I feel a little bit better than I did before. And it maybe feels a little bit easier. And I feel like I've got more positive things to focus on. So I think that's the first mindset or frame to choose, is that it's always serving your growth. And it's easy to connect the dots backwards once you're through it.
Yes.
And I can see now that all of those things happened for really powerful reasons. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I wouldn't be able to support my students in the depth and the capacity that I can if I hadn't have been through those things. So that really helps me when I go through things, because life is tough. And I think when you realize that it's tough and everybody goes through this stuff, and you stop making yourself wrong, or why is this happening to me? Everybody has challenges, everybody has things that they struggle with. And I think that in that connection with each other, and in really verbalizing and being honest and vulnerable and talking to someone, you realize that everybody has stuff, and it's okay, and it's going to be okay, and it's temporary, and it's going to pass. So I think when you can approach challenge from that perspective, it can help you to tap into a well of resilience within, and to really get that grittiness that sometimes we need to get through the tough stuff.
Yeah, I do love that chapter. I do love the chapter on
Mm,
grit and resilience
yeah.
and tapping. So give us something tangible. Give everybody something tangible, if about how we would tap into that resilience. One of your daily practices.
Okay, so I'm going to give two things. So one of them is for when you're actually really going through it. So if you're in a time where it feels super challenging, there's an intervention or an exercise from positive psychology that asks you to look at what it is that has been challenging from the last, let's say, 7 days. Look at the impact that that has had. So look at what's been hard about it. So it's not bypassing emotions. It's not toxic positivity. We're not skipping just to what's been good about it. We're actually honoring the fact that it's felt hard, and the fact that maybe you feel sad right now, or maybe you feel scared right now. And then we're looking at, okay, what are the silver linings within this experience? And how have you learned? What have you grown through? Or who have you become? Or was there maybe a special moment that you had with someone that actually brought you closer together through that struggle? So it's looking for those things. So when I'm in it, I'm always looking at what is good about this, even though it feels really hard. And
Yeah.
then
And I think there's this tendency to believe that it can't be both at the same time.
Mm.
That we can't acknowledge that it's hard and feel the pain, and at the same time be also holding the gratitude for the lessons, for the growth, for the positive things about it, at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be both. And I think when you remember that it is both, and then also remember there's something called negativity bias in our brain, which means that we feel bad things more strongly and we remember them more easily.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of research into positive emotions. And the second thing that I wanted to share is that resilience and grit is actually built from the times that we have that are uplifting and joyful and when we're in those positive emotions. So what happens is those emotions are broadening to our thinking. So they open up our mind so that we can find solutions more easily. And they're also building. So they also build psychological resources. So when
Yeah.
things do get hard, we're able to find the good more easily, or we're able to crack a joke about the thing that's hard, or we're able to just find the strength within us. And we actually need 3 positives for every 1 negative experience
Yeah.
in life. So the negativity bias, we're already going to feel the bad more strongly. And then
Yeah.
you've got the positivity ratio. So we actually need to be actively reducing our negative experiences and increasing our positive communications, thoughts, emotions, so that we can tip the balance on that ratio.
Yeah, I love the term upgrading your responses. I love that chapter about service to others, and that it
Mm.
can really help to put the focus on others and how you can be positive and be a positive influence and do something lovely for somebody else, or even be more gregarious, for want of a better term, in your response to someone else's win, in inverted commas,
Mhm.
or their amazing news, or even just their presence, as you talk about that. So tell me a little bit about how you coach others or encourage or invite others to embrace that philosophy about upgrading your responses.
Yeah, and I love this because it's actually one of the most simple and most powerful ways that we can build relationships. And I got asked this question. I was speaking at an event the other day, and so many of us experience negative relationships or negative responses in our lives, whether it's somebody telling us that we can't do the business idea that we want to start, or it's somebody who's complaining all of the time. We want to remember that we can't change other people, but we can control how we respond.
Yes.
So, one of the fastest and most powerful ways to improve a relationship is when somebody tells you good news. Okay. And you might actually have to set that up. So, you might have to ask them, what's been good about your day? Or what are we celebrating for you? Or
Yeah. Ask
tell me,
questions.
yeah,
So
tell me
many people don't
something.
ask questions.
Exactly. So, you might be listening to this thinking, well, they don't tell me good news all of the time. So you
Yeah.
so ask
Yeah.
ask what the good thing is first.
Yeah.
And then when they share with you, the response that we're going for is something that's called an active constructive response. So it
Yeah.
is being present, paying attention, repeating back the thing that they said and celebrating it, congratulating, but then also following up with another question. So
Yeah.
rather than just saying, oh, great, awesome, what's for dinner? Or saying, well, that doesn't really sound like something to celebrate. Or, oh, well, actually, I've got a better celebration than that. You would say, oh my goodness, Tess, amazing. Congratulations. I am so happy about this. So tell me more about it. So, what's the next step with this? Or
Yeah.
what feels the most exciting for you about this? And actually get into more conversation. You'll see the person light up. And that's like you investing into the bank account of your relationship. And
Yes.
you're investing in it, you're putting something in, you're contributing, and that bank balance is going to go up.
And it just feels so good to celebrate others and to be on the train of their happiness and joy. And it just lifts the vibration of everybody. I just love this. There was another thing that I loved. where you talked about how it's just so common in society, how we say, is it a love-based decision or a fear-based decision? Is it love versus fear? And there's this phrase, and pardon me, I'm going to paraphrase you, where you say, well, it's not love or fear. For me, there's only love, because fear is an illusion that's sent to test us. So, can you give us something tangible? Because when, just going back to what we were talking about before, about how when you're in a challenging time, it comes accompanied with a lot of fear, because challenges invite change. And so change is really scary. And you
Mm.
talk about this in your book, right? About how our brain is just conditioned to go, oh no, you know. So give us something practical to invite fear in, and to look at it. And to, I love the how you talk about making friends with it, claiming it, naming it
Yeah,
and claiming
name
your
it,
fear, and
claim
then
it, choose to move through
naming and
it.
claiming and choosing. Tell us about that. I know that's just the longest, most convoluted question, but I have all this stuff in my head. I'm going, oh my God, I got to ask her about this. I got to ask her about this.
I love it.
About
Well, I
the
can stay here all day because I love having this conversation together.
yay, yay. I might take you up on that, because I woke up and went, I could have a 5-hour conversation about this. I just got to ask her about all these things. The naming and the claiming and the fear,
Mm,
so it ceases to have power,
yeah. So
and
I'll give in
opening the change.
the example that really springs to mind right now, and I don't think I've ever even shared this as an example. I have a visa to live and work here in the United States of America.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of years ago when I was applying for my new visa and I was waiting, and I was back home in the UK, and my passport was at the embassy, and I had a trip that was planned, and I was waiting in anticipation to see if this visa got approved. Now, there was so much worry and so much fear, and the
Yeah.
worry and the fear is actually a future projection. So it's you
Yes.
thinking about something that hasn't happened and almost assuming that it's going to be bad rather than good. So my mind was going to, what if it doesn't get approved? Then I can't go on this trip, and I've got a house back in America and all of these things. And what do I do about my career? So I said to myself, I was like, Nick, whoa, like, whoa, stop, pause, just take a second, and let's look at what is actually even happening here. So when you get present, you often realize like nothing's happened yet. So it's really the
Yes.
power of our mind is amazing. And you know the power of your mind to create fear or to create worry. Just think about if you can orient that power to vision and creation instead, because you can. So naming it, claiming it, choosing to move through it, you think about, okay, so what is it that you're actually scared of? What is it you're actually scared of? So another great example is I used to be really scared to get visible on social media. And
Yeah.
I thought that it was
I hate
because I
it.
had, I'm an introvert as well. So
Yeah,
you'd
I
never
am
know, but I
too.
am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I used to think that the fear was of my coaching program at the time failing, and it was a fear of failure. But when I actually asked that question, what is the fear? I realized it was a fear of being judged by my friends from high school.
Ooh.
So
You talk
random.
about is that the Luke and Haley on the floor with the glitter making the vision
Yeah,
board in
yes,
New
yeah,
Zealand
that's
story?
exactly that time.
I
And
loved that story in the book. Oh, that's such a big one. It's
yeah.
the fear of being judged. So can you give everybody that amazing affirmation that came from that time? Because I think I'm gonna steal it from you as well.
Yep, exactly. So I got really clear on what it was I was scared of. And it
Yeah.
was scared of judgment. And I knew that I then had to own that fear and say, right, okay, this is what feels like it's scary for me right now. And I know that I can choose to move through this. So it was so simple and so powerful what I did. I first of all I asked myself what I would teach someone else to do. Then I
Yeah.
searched online and I was looking for a Kundalini yoga class, and I found an affirmation class. And I went to this girl's house. She's amazing. Went to this girl's house in New Zealand, actually, at the time, where I was staying with my brother and his partner. Went to the house and we did this affirmation creation class. We had glitter glue and cards. And I wrote down my affirmation, which was, I am fearlessly visible
Ugh.
and I boldly shine my light. And I walked,
I love it.
it's good, right? Thank you.
It's really good.
I walked out of this session and I went home and I had a notice board in the room that I was staying in. So I pinned it on the notice board and my brother Luke turned around to me and he was laughing so hard, Tess, that he had tears rolling down his face because I was in a challenging time then. I just moved across to the other side of the world. I'd sold my car. I'd started this online business. I'd sold a group coaching program and I had one sale of the group coaching program, which is not a group. So everybody had all of this, like, I know, right? So I'm like, what have I done? I've made a huge mistake. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I need to go back and get a job. And everyone was telling me, just go and get a job, just go and get a job, go and be a personal trainer again. You're really good at it. You can't do entrepreneurship. You're really bad at that. And I thought, I know what I need to do right now. And it's not go and do a job or get a job or do anything. It's actually go within and look at what is it that I actually need to do within my own mindset and psychology and self to feel strong and certain about the path that I knew was right for me. So
Yeah.
whilst it's just a note card, it's actually representative and symbolic of something way more than that. So I
Yeah.
stuck it onto the notice board and I meditated every day. It was like 2 p.m. I would set an alarm for every day. And I did a Kundalini prosperity meditation, which involved chanting. And after 35 days, I'd made $35,000 in my new business. And I'd gone from zero and not having anything to reaching the goal.
It
So this stuff
just
actually works when
it
you put
really
your
does.
intention, focus on it.
Yeah, and now you've helped thousands of business owners make millions of dollars with this exact process. So I got to ask you to share your 20-minute 7-step morning ritual. That is so great in the book. You go through about setting your tone for the day, right? But
Yeah.
I really love the 7 steps. So can you
Yeah.
share that with everybody?
For sure. And I love this. And the reason that this really worked for me was because I love structure and I love having something that is a go to practice.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting because when I started to do this, I made sure that it was me setting myself up in the day to be in a peak state before I went to do my work.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I've learned over time, because I've been doing this stuff now for 20 years, I know that you need to find something that works for you. So I'm going to
Yes.
share the steps from the book. And
Yes.
for everyone that's listening, I would much prefer for you to commit to something that is small and be consistent with the small commitment rather than try and do everything and just do it for a few days and then give up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share the 7 steps. I'm also going to share a really short 3-step version of this as well. So if
Oh,
you,
yes.
yeah, it is so good just getting consistent. So this is on day 30 of the book. So the first step is gratitude. So when you're practicing gratitude, this is what I do when I first wake up. My first thought in my head in the day is thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this day. I am grateful in every possible way. So that sets the tone for my day. And I then write down a page of gratitude. So gratitude rampage. The second step is to meditate. So the way that I do this in my morning is I have my phone loaded up with songs and alarms, and the alarm goes off and it plays the song. So my second track is actually the first one's like getting me into a feeling of gratitude. The second one is a breathwork meditation. So it starts my day in a way that helps me to find calm and find peace rather than switching off my alarm and looking at my emails. So
Yes.
those 2 steps are really, really powerful. And then I move into visualization. So this is what we are talking about before, and this is the power of your ability to direct your mind onto what you do want rather than what you don't want. So focusing on your vision for your best possible self or a vision for something that you want to bring into your life. Now I do this to another song as well, and I actually have a recording of the intervention. that I recorded so that you can listen to the meditation of best possible self. It's usually a
Yes.
written exercise, but I listen to it and it helps me to really get into that visualization state.
Okay.
Then I move my body. So I move my body, then I lock in from that place. So what happens when you move? You move your body, you move your mood. So you're
Yes. I
feeling
love
better.
that chapter.
Yeah, feeling more alive. And then when you say your affirmations, because you've gone through all of those other steps already, so you've got into gratitude, you have meditated, you've visualized, you've moved your body. Now, when you say your affirmations, they're more likely to land in your body because remember, positive emotions are broadening and they open up your mind so that you're able to actually bring them through into your body so much more easily and anchor them in. So I
Yes.
then say affirmations, or as well as affirmations, I have scripts that I read. So it's about the character that I have. It's about what I'm accomplishing. And I read through those scripts. I just have it in the notes section of my phone. I'm very basic. I read through the script out loud. And
And
that's
you write
kind.
the script or you grab that from somewhere else?
So I have a script that I actually write, and it's all about who I am. It's like I'm so happy and grateful to be this particular person, somebody who is on time, someone who is generous, someone who is a great listener, and all of these things. So it's
Yes.
everything that is important for me to be, and it's a reminder that that's who I am. And some of
Yes.
the things are things that I'm growing into and things that I'm practicing and things that I'm getting better at, but I say it in the present as if I already am it so that I become more of it. So that's what I do for my affirmations.
Yeah,
And
I
then
love
at
that act as if chapter of the book. Yeah.
so act as if it's already happened. And then I make sure that I nourish my body. So this at the moment, this looks like getting a warm lemon water with 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And I love that in the morning to start the day. If you don't have time to do that, so that can take like 25 minutes maybe. If you don't have
Yes.
time to do that and you want something shorter, then I would do thank, connect, and move. So I would get into gratitude, I would connect through meditation and then move your body. So dance around, whatever feels good for you. I love shaking my whole body out and just getting all
Yes.
of the tension out. That feels so good. And that will take 10 minutes. And 10 minutes done consistently, those small positive daily habits will compound over time. And you'll look back and realize you became a completely different person because of that dedication and devotion to 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, the consistency is so important, isn't it? I want to ask you about this because, and again, I apologize if I'm going to butcher this. You talk about the best possible self positive
Mm.
psychology intervention, writing a story where everything's gone as great as it can possibly go. Can you talk us through that? Because that was a mic drop moment for me,
Mm.
that section of the book.
Yeah, it's a really powerful intervention. And the way that I like to do this is I actually like to start with there's a tool called the Wheel of Life, which is used in coaching and it sections your life out into 8 different parts. So you can then look at what are the most important areas of your life to focus on first. Because sometimes when you do a best possible self exercise, it can be challenging to think about all of the different areas of life all at once. And I had so many students say to me, but Nick, what happens if I close my eyes or I start writing and I can't think about exactly who I want to become in the future? So now I actually love to have, okay, here's the areas of life. So you've got career, you have money, you have relationships, you have fun and leisure time, you have health. Okay, so you're working through the different areas. You rate yourself from 1 to 10 on how fulfilled and how satisfied you are with that area of your life. And then
Mm,
you look at your scores and you ask yourself, what are the 3 most important areas for me to focus on first? And you could actually do a mini best possible self for each area. Okay.
yes.
So you could do one for the big vision. You could do one for each element of your best possible self. So I love to do a best possible self for, it doesn't have to just be the big vision in the future, which is me as a grandma, with all of my kids and grandkids, and we're going on these amazing, I'm taking everyone on a vacation and we're investing quality time together. We're creating impact in the world. We've got our friends with us. We're eating outside. It's sunny. Everyone's happy. So that's like a big vision for the future. If I was going to do a smaller best possible self, I might do it around. So I ran a live event in London. So I did an in-person event and I wanted it to go as well as it possibly could. So I wrote a letter, and I actually wrote it from my best possible self. So I wrote
Ooh,
it
I love
in
that.
the, yeah, I wrote it in the past tense. And I said, Dear Nicola, I am so happy and grateful now, sitting on the aeroplane on the way from London to my hometown of Newcastle, and everything has gone as well as it possibly could at the live event. I showed up on stage, our community was really connected, everybody had an amazing experience, it was so much fun, the lights were like this, the flowers were like this. So it's really getting into the details. Here's how I felt. It's asking you to get clear and describe who are you as your best possible self? Where are you? What are you wearing? How do you feel? Who is with you? Who is around you? So you can start to really write that out. And then I would recommend you actually revisit it and you read it every day, or you speak it out to yourself every day to help it really solidify and lock in for you. But it's proven in the science to increase your levels of hope and optimism just by doing it once.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the happiness pie? Because there could be people listening right now going, okay, well, I just feel terrible. Like, this is all nice to say, just do this and just do that. But there really is studies done about how 40% of the pie can be controlled by us.
Yeah. And it's when you realize that, you really have to get honest about how you're treating yourself and how much you're creating your reality, or you're energizing your suffering rather than energizing the
Ooh.
upward spiral. Mm.
Energizing your suffering. Oh, that pierced my heart then, that phrase. Wow. Wow. There was a chart in your book that I really loved too, where you went through these scenarios and you had plus energy. Am I giving the
Hmm.
positive stuff, and energy you're giving to the suffering?
Yeah, exactly. So I say that you can either be energizing an upward spiral or energizing a downward spiral, and you get to choose. So
Yeah.
when we're thinking about this, like concept, you want to be thinking, you want to be thinking about where are you actually investing your energy and your attention, and
Yeah.
how are you speaking to yourself? Because when you are able to choose your response to something, when you are able to choose to, I think it's all about as well, like really bringing your power back to the moment. So the happiness pie shows us that 50% of our happiness is genetically predetermined. 10% is down to our circumstances. Okay. So we're actually giving our power away when we say, the traffic's so bad, it's making me feel like this, or I've had a terrible day because all of these things are going wrong. Like, the things are still going to go wrong. The traffic's still going to be there. It's still going to rain and be grey outside. But you are in control of 40% of the way that you feel, or 40% of the way you experience your circumstances, which means that there's actually a lot that's in our control. What feels really exciting for me
Yeah.
as well is that with epigenetics, the way that we are able to shift our emotions and the way that we feel will impact our children because of that.
Yeah.
So it's another reason, do it for yourself, but do it for your kids as well.
Yeah. There was a term that you used in the book, self-efficacy, and you defined it as is the belief in your own ability to influence and control events that affect your life and how they are experienced. So I just love that so much. And again, the practical exercises, not just, oh, here's a concept, just be positive. There's actual practical exercises that you give. I really loved the reflection practice. that daily practice where one of the things within that was think about how your mentor or your idol or someone you really admire, what would the Dalai Lama, how would how would he respond to that? How would, whatever
Mm.
your people that you hold up and revere. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's so important to be self-reflective. Not all of us are naturally. And it's something that we just get to, because as well as having a morning ritual, an evening ritual is also really important. It's those bookends to your day can really
Yeah.
support the way that you want to feel. So at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you can ask yourself what went well, what maybe didn't go so well, and what can I do differently next time?
Yeah.
And then on the things that maybe didn't go so well, or maybe it's something that you're looking to accomplish by the end of the week or the end of the next day, you can ask, okay, if I was acting as if, and
Yeah.
if I was showing up as the person that I want to become, whether it's my best possible self or I'm looking at my mentor or someone I admire, and I'm saying, what three things do I really love about them? What three things do I admire about them? And how can I bring them into my character or my commitment in the way that I behave today or tomorrow in this week? So then you can start to have really tangible things rather than saying, Beyonce is great. I love her. It's okay. So what is it that I actually love about her? What are three things? Okay. So I love her work ethic. I love how she actually prepares to perform. She doesn't just show up and wing it. So then how could I actually assimilate that into my life? How can I be more prepared? How can I actually set myself up for success by having a greater work ethic? So it's these things, it's the tiny little questions and the subtle distinctions that we make and those little micro commitments that we make that can
Yeah.
actually completely transform who we are. And it's not going from where you are right now, jumping into the best possible self in one day. It's the real dedication to positive psychology, not just being a science, but it being a way of life.
And a practice, a daily practice. So going back to what you were saying in the beginning of joy being these things that we look for moment to moment, day by day in our life, right? I mean, we do high low in my family every day at the end of the day over dinner. What was your high of the day? What was your
Yeah.
low? What do you want to do differently? I mean, it's a great. It's I love thinking of it as bookends like that, and just doing the work. I really loved that chapter of the book as well, where self mastery is never done, is your phrase. And I really loved that. Talk to me about the start before you're ready. Because I want to go back to what you were, I really loved that bit of the book too, where, going back to what you were saying before about, well, I'll be happy when this happens. I'll be happy if this happens, and it's this thing in the distance as opposed to something we can have today.
Mm.
So what's something tangible where we can decide that today's the day. I'm going to start, whether I feel ready or not.
Yeah. I always say your conditions are never going to be ideal. So stop waiting
Never.
for them to be. And
Yeah.
it's what is it that you can do today? So if you take your best possible self visualization and you know what a 10 out of 10 is going to look like overall or in a specific area of your life, you can then ask, okay, so what would be one positive step that I could take towards that today? And what happens is when you start to take the positive steps, it's like a muscle. You're exercising the muscle and you're building your confidence and you're starting to teach yourself and show yourself that you are a person that takes action. So that then
Yes.
snowballs and it actually increases your motivation. So, one of the things that I heard one of my mentors say was never let your mood dictate your action. So, never let the way that you're
Yeah.
feeling overcome like what it is that you want to accomplish. So I think that we have to really recognize and just remember that if we don't do something or if we tell ourselves that we can't do something, that depletes our motivation over time. The more that we tell ourselves that we're not going fast enough or we're not doing enough or we're not as far along as someone else or I'm embarrassed because I've been coasting. or why is so and so doing this? That's actually you beating yourself up, and that's a negative affirmation, and that's going to hit hard, and it's going to put you on that downward spiral. So it's really it's really remembering that you have to energize what you
Yeah.
do want and practice building this muscle so that you can increase your motivation.
So on the flip side of that, about not energizing our suffering or the negativity or the fears, can you share with everybody the 3 excuses exercise? Because I loved that one.
I think one of the things I also want to touch on, because I want to make sure that we're not just talking about being positive all of the time again, because I think that
Yeah.
that is also dangerous. I think that one of the things that I've learned is being vulnerable is so important, and being honest and raw and real about, okay, this was a hard day. I'm struggling, I'm suffering, and here's what I need. Here's what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah.
So it's in that connection. It's not making the excuse of, I don't have enough time to do this, or I don't have enough money to do this, or I'm complaining and blaming someone else. There's an exercise in the book that actually says, I make choices, not excuses.
Yeah, I
And it
love that.
talks about what would happen if we just had a day of no complaining. And I've actually tested this on myself and with students. And it is honestly amazing, because sometimes we complain automatically without us realizing that we are doing it. And when you start to eliminate that and you start to shift your conversation to be more creative or more constructive rather than destructive, it's
Mm.
amazing what can happen.
Yeah, I really, really love that. I I also wanna ask you about this idea of detachment from the emotions, or the bit where you talked about, often we think of the word interesting as a non-word. It's a lazy word because we can't think of a better word, right? Is often the viewpoint. And I liked what you were talking about, where you remove the judgment from your thoughts and feelings, and you just adopt the attitude of, that's interesting. I'm interested. That's of interest that I'm feeling this way or thinking this way. So can you just talk us through that a little bit?
Yes. So curiosity is going to be your best friend. So rather than, and also just taking a pause. So when I say like, oh, that's interesting, I'm like, oh, I'm so curious about that. I'd love to like uncover or discover or understand or learn more about that. And that might be something that comes up for you within yourself. It might be a thought or a feeling that you notice. And rather than saying that's good or that's bad, it's like, oh, I'm so curious. Like, what is this here to show me? Or what can I learn from this? And if it's with somebody else or a situation in your life, you can take a moment, remember that everything's serving your growth. Okay. So then you get curious and you say, oh, like, I wonder about this. Like, tell me more about this. Or
Oh, I
I,
like that.
I wonder what I can learn from this. Or I wonder what this person is really trying to say or not say. And when
Yeah.
you get into that place of curiosity, you're actually starting to be in a student's mindset, and you're starting to be in a growth mindset of, what can I learn from this process, rather than reacting and saying immediately responding. You're actually listening and showing that you're actively listening by asking for more information, or by being in the process with the universe of, oh, cool. And what's next? Like, what else can I see now? Or what else can you show me now?
And training yourself, being teachable, teaching yourself and listening. And oh, yeah, yeah. Look, the other thing that's, we're constellating around is this idea, and you talk about the cricket example in the book about seeing the opportunities instead of the obstacles, choosing to see it that way.
Yeah. So, how often do we focus on? I mean, even if you took the whole concept of psychology and where psychology started, it started focusing on disorder and disease. how often do we focus on the bills, on the problems, on what it is that's going wrong, and what might be possible if we focused on the opportunities instead? So that example, that conversation was from a time where I never studied psychology at school. I did maths and physics, and I was supposed to be a mechanical and automotive engineer. And that's what I had scholarships to go to university to do that. And then everyone said, with nails like this, how are you ever going to do that? So thank goodness for this conversation, which took me on a totally different career trajectory, because my partner at the time came home from seeing a sports psychologist who'd said, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to visualize that you're on the cricket field and you've got the bat in your hand and you're about to go and hit the ball and you're looking around the field. Don't look at the fielders, look for the gaps in between them instead. So that
Yeah.
one conversation made me cancel my engineering degrees and go on to study psychology. And here we are now.
Well, thank you to that sports
Right.
psychologist. It's incredible. We're talking about being inside of our experience and harnessing the power of positivity, of our own intuition, trusting that, and all these beautiful things. Another thing that really captured my attention and my heart was when you talked about how you're interested in exploring the edges of your growth. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I really love, one of the things that actually comes from curiosity, I find, is that you're able to explore those subtle edges on your terms rather than life continually kind of throwing you as if you're a pinball in a pinball machine. And I think that constant seeking and that constant getting okay with things being tough is allowing you to grow. Because if you're not pushing at those edges, you're not leaning over them, and it doesn't feel a little bit uncomfortable, then you're not actually growing at the speed or to the capacity and the potential that you could. So, I mean, I grew up thinking that I was going to reach a point in my journey or my career or my wealth where all of a sudden everything would be easy. And I don't know if it's just maturity. And I realized everything is actually not always easy, and that's okay and it's normal. So I think as I've grown, I have found gratitude for all of life's experience. And I've chosen to experience hard things or daily disasters or natural disasters, like I say in the book. Like, I know that I have a power to shift the way that I feel, even if I can't change the event itself. I can change how I feel about it or how I approach it or how I engage with it in the future or in my past even. And I really think that just remembering that we do have that power in the moment and we can choose and choose again is a very
Yes.
simple essence of what it means to be human.
I love what you said about choosing to explore the edges on your own terms rather than feeling like you've been thrown there from external forces. It really allows you to explore it from a
Mhm,
place of empowerment and safety,
mhm.
and within the bounds of your own propriety, or that really speaks to me. Um, what are you afraid of?
Ooh. So I'm afraid of, I think one of the things is not reaching my potential. And the
Oh, that's
reason
my
that I
fear
know
too.
that, so we spoke a little bit earlier on about the fear and the love. And there's also a theory in motivation that we have towards motivators and away from motivators. So fear can actually be something that propels us forward. It can also be
Yeah.
something that keeps us stuck. So when we're
Yes.
thinking about it in terms of motivation, we're looking at what is the result or the vision that's calling us forwards that feels so hopeful that it's going to help us take action. But we also look at what is it that we're afraid of and how might that also catapult us into action. So I think for me, it was in maybe 2019 or 2018, 2019. I was about to speak on a stage and I was sat in the audience and I was watching the other speakers to kind of have some context to the conversation and think about what it was I was going to share. And I remember sitting there and watching this speaker and thinking to myself, I'm so embarrassed because I have not been reaching my full potential over this last year or so. And I need to do something about this. And the fear was that I would get to the end of my life. And this is a positive psychology intervention as well. So you can ask yourself in meditation or in journaling, what is it that you want people to say about you at the end of your life? And what is the legacy that you want to leave? So I kind of put myself forwards into the end of my life and I thought, imagine if everyone says about me, oh, remember that Niyc Pidgeon girl? She had so much potential. Whatever happened to her? And that was enough, Tess, for me to have a moment inside of myself to think, okay, let's go. I need to make some changes. I need to move forwards with things. And yeah, so that
I mean,
is my
so that's
greatest fear.
tapping right into that. What are those bitches from high school going to say about me?
Yeah, it's like, what if I don't reach my full potential? Like, I want to be able to look back and say, really did my best. Like, I really did my
Yeah.
best, whether that means doing or not doing, whether that means loving more or looking after yourself more or doing a bit of both, whether it means changing your business goal to focus on a family goal or vice versa, whatever that looks like for you, because happiness and success and vision, it's not the same for all of us. So it's
Yes.
really about us letting go of the shoulds and letting go of what society thinks that we should do or be, and allow ourselves to be, do, create, and have from our own intuition, our own values, and our own desires.
Yeah. So what drives you the most?
It's really impact. Like, if you could see on my wall, I have the huge giant post-it note, and I want to be able to impact 1 billion people through positive psychology coaching. I want to be able to help the world be more mentally healthy. And they're big visions and missions, but I just know step by step, and the more that we do it together, it's completely possible.
Yeah, collective or conscious, what did you call it? Conscious
Like,
communion? I
yeah,
can't
like
remember.
creation,
Yeah,
co-creation. I think it's,
yeah,
for me, like, if you're having a hard day, it's really challenging to continue to do the thing that feels scary or hard or difficult, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel motivated, even when there's 10 other things that you could distract yourself by doing. So, how do you call up that energy? How do you call up the commitment? And how do you really get realigned to taking that action? And for me, it comes through mission and it comes through purpose and it comes through meaning. So when I remember that there's these people out there that need these tools of positive psychology, and by me not doing the thing that I said I would do, but I'm scared to do, it means
yeah,
I'm not able to help those people. So
yeah,
that is a very, very poignant reminder, and it helps me find the fortitude to keep on going because it energizes me. So when you've got a mission, when you work into your strengths, when you know what your values are, as soon as you tap into them, it's like, okay, cool. Like, here I am again. This is what I'm going to stand for. And I always find if I'm not in that energy, it's usually because I've got a little bit off course or I've focused on
yes.
something else rather than the thing that's really important for me.
Yeah, I close every episode with asking the same question, so I'll ask it to you. What would you say to someone out there who's got a dream in their heart and they don't feel like they've got what it takes to make it happen? What would you say?
You've got everything within you already that you need. And the more that you can tap into the trueness and the uniqueness of who you are and learn more about who you are, the easier it's going to be to reach your goals. So now with positive psychology, I know my personality, I know what my strengths are, and I can apply them to everything that I do. The fact is, everybody has things that they're good at. We just exhibit them in different ways. So if you feel like you want to know more about that, then you can just go and you can take a strengths test. And it's like these are your top 5 or these are your top 10. So I always believe in starting from that place because there's so much that we all already have within us.
Yes. Show up as you. I
Mm,
love it. I cannot recommend this book more highly. Um,
thank you.
now is
Means
your
so much.
chance, right? It's you can learn more about Nick at nickpidgeon.com. You can get a copy of her books. You can learn more about Unstoppable Success, her programs. At nickpidgeon.com/resources. There's all kinds of amazing tools. I just highly recommend just reading this book and working your way through it in a 30-day period. It's such a great read and it's so tangible, and there's all of these great exercises, and just enter her world and you will just be opened up in the most beautiful ways. So thank you so much for joining me. We've left everything in the show notes. You can learn more about everything, and just enter Nick's world, and it's just a better place when you do. So thank you for the way that you show up.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
What a fantastic conversation. I feel like a plant that's been watered. I wrote down so many key takeaways. So, 40% of your happiness pie can be controlled by you. How are you treating yourself? How are you creating your reality? Everything is serving your growth, even if it feels challenging today. So, just keep showing up. Things shift. Look for those glimmers of light and be consistent with your commitment to show up for yourself. Direct your mind to what you want as opposed to what you don't want. Where are you investing your energy and attention and commitment? Bringing your power back to this moment, that the power is in the moment. That was a big one for me. And never let your mood dictate your action. That tip from her mentor, that really spoke to me. And when she asked, "Are you energizing your suffering?" That really pierced my soul. I do not want to be a person that is energizing my suffering. I want to energize my happiness. The naming and claiming your fear so it ceases to have power exercise. When I read the book, that was a really big one for me. So I really recommend doing that one. When she said tap into your well of resilience, I felt like I had this unending pot of power that I could tap into. I don't know how you felt when she said that, but that was a big one for me. The best possible self letter, writing out who are you, how do you feel, who's around you, who do you need to keep close to you to be the best version of yourself. That was a big exercise for me when I read the book. So I highly recommend doing that exercise. And when she talked about the morning ritual and the evening ritual and being consistent with that practice to bookend your day to really inform how you want to feel, the consistency of that practice really shifted things for me. And I love the flexibility around it when she talked about finding what works for you. You know, she listed what she does, but that may not work for you. Just be consistent when you find what works for you. Those micro commitments every day, those small choices, and making those choices and investing in them because they make room for the really big decisions. That's a really big one for me. And when she said taking one positive step today to exercise the muscle that you're a person that takes action, and then that builds confidence and you continue to teach yourself, and then you gradually with every choice become a person who takes action, and you're becoming the person that you want to be, and you are the person that you want to be today. um, I'm a person that is constructive as opposed to destructive. I'm a person that makes choices, not excuses. That really spoke to me. And staying curious and actively listening and choosing to be interested in yourself and all of your experiences and asking why. Why do I feel like that? That was a big one. And being uncomfortable, exploring the edges of your experience, and that taking yourself out of your comfort zone is really, really powerful for growth. It helps you to see what you're made of and try new things and really tap into that resilience. And letting go of what society says. Allowing yourself to be, to do, create, and have what you want from your own intuition, values, and desires. That was a really big moment for me when she said that. And just asking, how do you call up the energy and commitment to take action in your life? How do you find that purpose and meaning and impact? And when you have that, you can claim your voice and claim your happiness. As she says, self-mastery is never done. I highly recommend getting a copy of Now Is Your Chance. This book, I refer to it on a weekly basis. I've used many of the strategies that she shared in today's episode, and there are so many more in the book. And if you're going through a grief journey right now, I highly recommend reading One More Day. Not only is it a really inspiring read to learn about her personal journey with grief and tragedy, and there has been a lot in her life, but lots of tangible strategies for how to find that balance when you're going through a really difficult time. And I love how she encourages us not to negate it, not to ignore it, to listen to it and acknowledge, I'm really struggling today. Things are really hard. And then finding those moments of joy and happiness, and that it can be both, that you can feel both today. And how do you find that balance to keep showing up and to keep calling in how you want your life to be? So please share with me the strategies that you try and what worked for you and what resonated for you in our group. I am really looking forward to having those conversations with you.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.